Hi, welcome back. Our previous lesson was on individual labor supply. Today we'll be moving on to the market labor supply. So when we talk of market labor supply, what we're referring to is the total quantity of labor that individuals are willing and able to offer in a particular job market. It is the sum of all individual labor supply decisions made by workers in response to factors such as wages, working conditions, and non-monetary benefits. So now that we know what labor supply is, let's move on to the labor supply curve. Now, the market labor supply curve is represented here in the graph, where we have the quantity of labor supplied, and then we have wages. It is upward sloping. What we mean by upward sloping means it moves from the left to the right. Now, what this means is that higher wages in a particular occupation, it induces people to work more. So if there are higher wages, then people are more willing to work in that occupation. We can see this from the graph that higher wages induces more working hours. Now, there are three reasons why the labor supply curve in a particular market can be upward sloping. Now, the first reason is shown here, which is higher wages may induce new people to enter the workforce. So, an example is if we consider two markets, maybe market A or market B, or in this case, one occupation and another occupation. They could be related, they could be two different occupations. So let's say that we have the fast food and then we have supermarkets. So assuming there are workers who work for the fast food industry, and then there are workers who work in the grocery market or just a supermarket in general. Now, what the first point here simply means that if there is an increase in wages in, for instance, market A, which is the fast food market, new people may enter this workforce. So in every market, there are people that are working in that market, there are people that are working in another market, and then there are people that are not employed in general. So if the wages increase in the fast food industry, we may have people that are currently unemployed that will now enter the market. So what this means is higher wages, more people are entering into the fast food industry. Now, the second reason is higher wages incentivize existing working force to put in more hours. So apart from people entering the market, there are existing people. So the people that were originally working in the fast food industry, for instance, let's say that the average working hours is 6 hours per week. Now, if wages go up, upward labor supply implies that people that are already working the 6 hours will decide that, okay, now wages have gone up, I can work more. So they'll increase their labor supply to maybe 8 hours per week or 10 hours per week. So we have the first as people entering the market, and then people who are already existing workers in that market also increasing their labor supply. Now, the third reason why the labor supply curve can be upward is that higher wages in a particular occupation or a particular industry may lead to people switching occupations. So this is where our two industry example comes in. So there may be people working at the fast food industry or at supermarket industry. So if the wages increase in the fast food industry, we may have people who were originally working in a supermarket that will now switch to the fast food industry. So three things account for an upward sloping market labor supply curve. And the first is an increase in wage in a particular industry may cause people that were not working to now come in, and then people that were working might also increase their labor hours, and then other people will also switch industries and move to the industry with the higher wages. So in total, if any of these happen, then this might lead to higher wages causing more working hours, which is an upward sloping market labor supply curve. Now that we know the shape of the labor supply curve, what happens when some factors in the market change? Now, we saw in our previous lesson that any change in some market outcomes, apart from the change in the wage, can increase or decrease labor supply for an individual. And this is a similar case for the market labor supply. So let's now move to labor market shift. So labor supply decisions they are very connected to other markets and to government policies. So if other market factors change, it may affect labor decisions, which will shift the labor supply curve to the right or to the left. Now, in our previous lesson, we saw that when the labor supply curve shifts to the left, then this is a decrease. And if it shifts to the right, then this is an increase. So a decrease simply means that even though wages have not changed, other market factors have changed that have shifted the entire labor supply curve to the left, and then similarly for the increase. So we are now going to move on to factors that shift the labor supply curve. Now, the first factor that can shift the market labor supply curve is changes in wages in other occupations. Let's consider the market for fast food workers as we did before. So if there is a wage increase in jobs that compete for similar workers, such as grocery store cashiers, it will lead to a reduction in the supply of labor in the fast food industry. So this is what we talked about just a few minutes ago, that if we have fast food workers and grocery store workers, if wages should increase in one industry, workers can switch from another industry and now enter into that market in which wages are high. So this is because people will switch from working in fast food industry to working in grocery store, since both jobs require similar skills. So this will just result in a shift in the labor supply curve to the left in the fast food industry. Now, if the wages of the grocery cashiers should fall, then people will also switch to the fast food industry because the two jobs require similar skill. And this is going to shift the fast food industry labor supply to the right. Now, the second thing that shifts the labor supply curve is changes in the number of potential workers. So the total number of people in a labor market is a subset of the total number of people in a society. And this means that when population grows, so does the potential labor supply. While a decrease in population will lead to a decrease in labor supply. So let's consider a community, say community A, and the total population in that community is maybe 10,000. Now, 10,000 people are potential workers in maybe the fast food industry, assuming that's the only industry that exists. All these 10,000 people are, if they are of working age and if they are able and willing to work, they are potential workers. Now, considering maybe migration, people moving from other places, let's assume that migration is a total of 2,000 people that move into that city in a particular period, and that remains unchanged. If the population in that community increased to 15,000, then this means that the potential number of workers in that community has increased. So there's a good chance that labor supply will also increase. Now, if the population decreases to maybe 8,000, then this represents a decrease in the potential number of workers for the fast food industry. So this will lead to a decrease in the labor supply. So one other thing that may shift the labor supply curve to the left or to the right is changes in the number of potential workers. And this is a subset of the number of people or the total population that exists in a particular society. Now, the third thing that shifts the labor supply curve is changing benefits of not working. Now, what we have to remember here is that the decision to work or not work is usually driven by comparing the wage with the foregone benefit of not working. So in our previous lesson, we talked about working or leisure. So you typically have maybe 24 hours in every day to either work or not work. And if we consider just two goods in the market, maybe just working and then not working, which is leisure. If you are working, you are foregoing leisure. And if you are enjoying leisure, then you are foregoing the wage that you get if you were working. The decision to work or not to work is driven by comparing the wages that you get, which is usually the benefit of working, and then the foregone benefit of not working, which in this case may be the benefit you get from enjoying leisure. So anything that changes the benefit of not working will shift the labor supply curve. Now, the next thing that shifts the labor supply curve is non-wage benefits, subsidies, and income tax. We see that most employers provide non-wage benefits such as health insurance, retirement benefits, paid days off, and we discussed this in our previous lesson. So these benefits, they increase the benefit of working another hour. So for any worker, if there are such benefits such as health insurance, retirement benefit, and maybe more paid days off, the worker does not just consider the wage as benefit of working. We take into account all of these things. So even if the wage that you are paid per hour doesn't change, and any of these other factors, such as an increased health insurance or an increase in the number of paid days off or an increase in your retirement benefit, then this might increase your labor supply for a particular industry. So if any of these change, it will change the compensation a worker gets at any given wage, and this will shift their willingness to work and hence their labor supply curve. Now, let's consider an example of this. So, if an employer offers higher coverage of health insurance, this may incentivize people to increase their labor supply for that particular job. But on the other hand, if there is an increase in the income tax, then this will reduce the benefit of working because you get to keep only a proportion of each extra pound that you earn. So this increase in income tax will reduce the benefit of working another hour, which will reduce your labor supply. So this is all that we have on our lesson on the market labor supply. Our next lesson will be on market structure. If you enjoyed today's lesson, consider subscribing. Thank you.